The Seasons of Life, a powerful motivational story for anyone starting over, a Jim Rohn-inspired motivational story. Welcome to the Story Porch, where quiet moments teach the loudest lessons. Tonight's story is about patience, seasons, and the small choices that change everything. So sit back, take a deep breath, and let this tale remind you that you're never too old to grow something new. There comes a time in life, usually somewhere after 50, when the noise starts to fade, and the lessons begin to speak a little louder. We stop rushing, we start reflecting, and we realize that the most powerful truths don't come from books or screens, but from quiet moments. A cup of coffee on the porch, a slow walk at dusk, a conversation with someone who's lived long enough to understand what really matters. Tonight, I want to share one of those stories, a story about patience, about seasons, and about the simple choices that shape our lives. It's inspired by the timeless wisdom of Jim Rohn, the kind of wisdom that's not loud, not flashy, but steady, honest, and unforgettable. So settle in, take a deep breath, let the world slow down for a moment, because sometimes all it takes to change the direction of a life is a handful of seeds, and the right person to show you what they mean. There was a small town in the middle of America, the kind of place where the sidewalks crack softly under your feet, where porch lights glow a little warmer at dusk, and where every neighbor knows your last name. And in that town lived an old man named Jim Harper. No one knew exactly what Jim had done for a living. Some said he ran a hardware store. Others believed he had traveled coast to coast as a salesman. A few swore he had once been a teacher. But one thing everyone agreed on: Jim was the person you visited when life didn't make sense. He listened more than he spoke. He didn't judge. He didn't preach. He just had a way of offering the kind of quiet truth that settles into your soul and stays there. One spring afternoon, as the dogwoods began to bloom and the breeze carried that soft scent of fresh beginnings, a young man named Daniel walked up to Jim's porch. Daniel was in his late 20s. That confusing age when you're supposed to have it all figured out, but somehow you don't even know where to start. His shoulders were heavy. His eyes were tired, and he carried the look of someone who had tried and tried and tried without getting anywhere. Jim looked up from his rocking chair. "Afternoon, son. What brings you here?" Daniel let out a long breath. "Mr. Harper, I'm lost. I've been working hard, setting goals, doing everything people say I should do, but my life isn't changing. Not fast enough. Not in the ways I need it to." Jim nodded slowly, as if he had heard these words 1,000 times before from 1,000 people just like Daniel. Then the old man reached into the pocket of his worn flannel shirt and pulled out a small cotton bag. "Daniel," he said, "do you know what's inside this little pouch?" Daniel opened it, slowly, carefully. Inside were a few tiny dried seeds. "Seeds?" he asked, confused. Jim smiled. "Not just seeds, son, lessons." Jim leaned back, letting the porch chair creak beneath him. "Every seed," he said, "carries a forest inside it. Most people look at a seed and see nothing, small, unimpressive, hardly worth noticing. But inside that seed is a tree, and inside that tree is a lifetime of growth, shade, shelter, and more seeds waiting to be born." He pointed gently at Daniel. "You're no different. Your potential doesn't look impressive right now because it's still inside you. It hasn't been planted, it hasn't been watered, it hasn't had the time it needs." Daniel swallowed. "But I'm working hard." "Why? Why isn't anything happening?" Jim smiled in that patient, almost fatherly way. "Because life doesn't reward wishing, it rewards planting." Jim held up 3 fingers. "In this world, son, there are 3 kinds of people. The first are the ones who have seeds but never plant them. They dream big but act small. They wait for the perfect moment, and time runs out while they're waiting. The second are the ones who plant the seeds but never water them. They start, but they don't stay. They get excited, then discouraged, and the moment the results don't show fast enough, they quit. These folks never give their seeds, or themselves, a real chance. The third are the ones who plant the seeds and care for them every single day, even when nothing seems to be happening, even when the soil looks the same, even when other people ask, 'Why are you wasting your time?'" Jim paused. "And eventually, those seeds grow, and those people are called lucky. But luck, my boy, is just patience wearing a disguise." The porch fell quiet for a moment. A wind chime whispered. The sun warmed the boards beneath their feet. Daniel finally asked, "So the seed grows even when I can't see it?" Jim nodded. "Oh, absolutely. Everything important grows underground first, out of sight. A seed spends weeks building roots before it even thinks about breaking through the soil. But most people give up right before that happens." He tapped one of the seeds in Daniel's palm. "You're judging your progress by what you see above ground. But life is measuring what you're building below ground. Your discipline, your character, your habits, your patience." Jim stood slowly and looked toward his garden. You can't change the seasons. Not in nature, not in life. You can't force spring to come early. You can't skip the winter. You can't rush growth. He turned back to Daniel. "All you can do is plant and tend to the soil and trust that the season will come when it's meant to." Daniel's eyes softened. "What if I fail?" Jim laughed gently. "Oh, you will. Everyone does. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the soil success grows in. The only true failure is never planting at all." As the sun started to set, Jim placed the small pouch of seeds back into Daniel's hand. "Plant these, son, not because they're special, but because you are. Let them remind you of who you're becoming." Daniel nodded, his spirit lighter. "Thank you, sir." Jim smiled. "Go tend to your seeds and to your life. And remember, when you change, everything around you changes too." Daniel went home that night and planted the seeds behind his small rented house. The next morning, nothing. The next week, nothing. But every day he watered them. Every day he checked on them. Every day he whispered to himself, "Roots first, growth later." And over time, slowly, quietly, something inside him began to grow. Patience, discipline, clarity, calm. And one summer evening he stepped outside and saw a tiny green sprout pushing through the soil. Not big, not flashy, but real. Proof that life grows even when you can't see it. Years later, Daniel became the kind of man others visited when their lives didn't make sense. Calm, steady, grounded. And in his pocket, he always kept a small bag of seeds, a reminder that we are all carrying a forest inside us. But it only reveals itself when we are patient enough to plant it. Life has a gentle way of teaching us the same lesson again and again until we're finally ready to understand it. A lesson about patience, about daily effort, about trusting the roots long before the leaves ever appear. Wherever you are in your journey, starting over, rebuilding, rediscovering yourself, keep planting, keep watering, keep tending to the small things that matter more than you realize. Because when you change, your whole world begins to change with you. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If this story touched your heart, feel free to share it with someone who might need a little hope today. And remember, the forest inside you is still growing. Give it time, give it care, give it faith. Until next time, take good care of yourself, and may your next season be your most beautiful one yet.